Show enough. Who's the meanest? No one has that except for
I don't.
me. That's from the Last Dragon.
So we're saying Masterclass, but we really need to say besmoke. Is it besmoke? Is it smoke class?
Smoke class.
Besmoke. That's Games Workshop's a word that I think they cool when they say it quite often.
I think that if I had some wine. Let's do it. We get no countdown whatsoever. That Dom guy is a hefty taskmaster. Brutal.
All right.
I'm like, give us a countdown. He's like, how about we go live now?
We are live now.
You're like, 3, 2, you've been live for 4 seconds.
All right.
I was counting them down with you. It's time for the Demon Master Class, where we talk about demons and master the class.
Something like that.
It's something similar.
Yeah,
I think
like
that was what I looked at.
Yeah.
But let's talk about this. We're going to talk about units. We're going to talk about secondaries. We're going to talk about general gameplay. We're going to talk about key units. And at the end, we're going to give some sample lists.
Yep. So first thing to note here, guys, is that this is going to be a test sample. Normally, this is a Patreon-only thing. So today, we are just running through everything. We're trying to get all the kinks out. We're trying to make this look, I know Slanesh, you're upset about that, but everybody else, we're trying to make this look very, very good for you guys, very clean, crisp. So this one is going to be free. We're just going to make this available to everybody, give everybody a little taste, let you figure out if you like it. If you do like it, please sign up.
Should we give Dom some props?
Yeah, and once again, we are at Fabricator's Forge, and we're probably going to be doing this at Fabricator's Forge forever. He'll never be able to get rid of us now. So we'll be here.
We are the herpes of 40K.
So thank you so much, Dom, for having us here. And yeah, let's get in. Let's get into those demons. So demons are brand new codex. They are
brand new-ish.
Yeah, less than 2 months now. I mean, something very near and dear to my heart. Obviously, I play Chaos all the time. But Brad actually took demons to a Games Workshop event this year, which is something I can't even say I did. So
I did indeed.
Yeah.
And I also didn't bring an army as usual, and it just showed up.
It did.
From the warp.
Yeah. So we're gonna, like you said, we're gonna talk about first thing I think is the most important thing, which is gonna be list building. What goes into your list building
and why?
Yeah, the most important stuff. So first things is the mechanics.
Let's talk about the Warp Star mechanic and how to unlock it.
So there's a couple things that demons do that other armies don't do. The first thing is obviously unmodifiable saves, which is something we're going to get to when we talk about the core units and things like that. The second part is, of course, the Warp Storm chart. So that was something that they had in 7th edition, and it was roll 2 dice and some random nonsense happened. Now what you do is you roll 8 dice at the beginning of your turn, and it lasts until your next turn. So basically, Brad doesn't roll Warp Storm, by the way. He has a pitch Warp Storm roller when he goes to tournaments.
God.
But you will roll 8 dice, and then all the 4-ups you will bank. Now, it's important to talk about this because there are a number of different Warp Storm abilities that are very useful. Things that you're primarily going to be spending points on. And the important stuff to talk about is how to unlock those. So every god has its own Warp Storm
chart.
Yeah.
So we have one for Undivided, and then there's one for each of the 4 gods. So you can unlock these by having a pure detachment of them. Unfortunately, Bellicor now does not unlock them by being in a detachment of himself. So you have to actually have pure detachments to get them. Now, you have to ask yourself what you're trying to do with your demon list before you're going to, decide which to unlock. Because things like Khorne have, weirdly enough,
some great ones.
Some great
some
stuff
really rewarding
in
stuff.
hand-to-hand.
Yeah, they're fantastic.
Yeah.
And then other ones like Nurgle, well, we just don't talk about the Nurgle one. We just don't try to unlock that one.
Undivided does have heal, though.
Undivided is great. Undivided you get automatically for just playing demons.
Yeah, that goes, I was going to say, that one is undivided. Undivided just allows you to have that. The others, you have to have a pure detachment. Now, I haven't even seen a list that doesn't have a Khorne detachment.
I was going to say, the most well-rounded lists take 2 detachments. I 100%. Don't know a role where you not take 2 detachments, and it's important to note that that second detachment is generally
You super
whatever your second warp storm is going to be, because the first one's always undivided. Because we're going to talk about the key units today. Some of these units are from multiple gods are just too good to not take in a demon's list. So you're just going to do them.
I want to put them up here. TG said I wasn't allowed to do this, but I'm doing it for just a second.
That gentleman.
This is the main reason I brought demons, by the way.
We did when we did start. I was talking to him about my list. He was like, "That guy seems ridiculously fun to play," and he is.
Was, and it was awesome.
So warp storm is very important when you build your list. I honestly think, I don't know, like he said, I don't know an army that doesn't just have a corn detachment.
Well, let's talk about why.
Sure.
So for four warp storm points, which is average if you're not rolling these curse dice from Matt, you're going to get 4 warp storm dice. For 4 warp storm dice, you get +1 attack on all corn models, which is a big deal with with especially people that have awesome sweep attacks.
Yeah.
And also it makes some of these units much like ridiculously. Bloodletters getting 10 extra attacks is a big deal, man. Are we not agreeing that that's a big deal?
No, I mean, it's quite powerful. Another thing to note is that Be'lakor has all of the marks. So when you do take Be'lakor, any of these Warp Storm abilities that you gain from spending the points, he will also be affected by. So there is another Khorne one that is very powerful.
I mean, possibly one of the most powerful.
I honestly think it is the most powerful, and that is 4 Warp Storm points. And basically, in your opponent's movement phase, when they attempt to fall back a unit, so the important stuff here is that you are in combat with these Khorne units. You roll a die on a 4+, they just can't fall back. They thought about it a lot, and they said, you know what? I really like to be in combat with
coupled
Thirster.
with, I don't know, maybe Scarbrand also.
Yeah, so that was just multiple opportunities for you to be stuck in combat, because you will roll that leadership check, and then you roll that 4+. So sometimes I've seen a lot of those lists run both, and I have run both where you get to use both abilities, which is just quite fantastic. So that's why we said Warp Storm is very, very powerful.
But you have to plan it, though. You have to plan it.
Yeah.
And you have to your go turns are going to, a lot of times, be dependent on how many successes you get on the Warp Storm.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to put that big go turn when you only get
2 Warp Storm.
Yeah, exactly.
Even 2's not bad, because 2 gives you the like low numbers is okay, because you can do the unaffected by move or charge modifiers, which is very powerful as well. So let's talk about some of the undivided stuff. So for me, the most powerful undivided one is probably 3 Warp Storm, which is -1 to hit when you're further than 12 inches away. And that's very important that we note 12 inches away, because, well, it doesn't work any other way. So it's important to note that. But that one, when you don't have a go turn, and it's like turn 1 or turn 2, it is nice to just impose a -1 hit modifier on your opponent's entire army. Not to mention, for everyone who doesn't know, these big boys here, and all of the big boys, they don't get affected by any terrain. So even if he's standing in a forest,
doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. So
18 or more wounds is not affected by those things.
Yeah, so not having any way to give yourself a -1 to hit is very unfortunate. So I'm glad that they have this ability for them to get -1 to hit. The other ones is, like I said before, Warp Storm points is basically the movement phase or the charge phase not being affected by modifiers. Now, that's very important when you fight against armies like Custodes or Tau, where they have abilities to go,
I just have to go through diff terrain.
Yeah, the only way you get 10 models in on the table, you plan it out, your turn, man, I want to get 10 bloodletters in.
Which happens more than you actually would think, just because you're going to be putting down fairly big footprints. We're putting 32s down in 10 models per. So it's a really big deal.
So, yeah, I mean, that's very important that you have that in your back pocket. You know, we've got Custodes, got Tanglefoot. Tau have photon grenades is what they're called, -2 to charge. So they have a whole bunch of things that affect you in the movement phase. So it's really nice that you can kind of just ignore that, which is very, very powerful.
I'm going to try to get those 6. I did get 4 this time.
That's good. So that is the ones that are the most powerful one. Now, the only one that I would remark in other trees.
Well, we didn't talk about heal, though.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Very, very important. Probably the most important one, which is Very expensive. It's 5 Warp Storm, but there is a reason
I was gonna
behind
say,
it.
I haven't got it yet, by the way.
I have gotten it a couple times. So that one is 5 Warp Storm, and it is everybody on the table heals. Now, single wound units, they heal D3 slain models. They come back from the dead. All the big boys or any multi-wound models, such as your flamers, or I don't know, your characters or anything like that, they will heal D3 wounds. So it's very powerful for you to get shot at, and it's during the morale step. So basically, your opponent, if you're bottom, well, you can do it at the end of your opponent's turn. So that means on your following, when you are at the
you
bottom,
can also extend the range out from your units too. If you're making models come back from the dead.
Yep, you can do, Poxwalker tricks where we basically conga line, we bring a unit back that wasn't on an objective, and now all of a sudden it is on an objective. You also have the power with some of these guys that they bracket. Well, if you heal D3 wounds, you might not be bracketed anymore. So that's a big deal as well. And then some of the other stuff in there that we haven't talked about yet is some of the nuanced stuff, which is increasing the range of some auras. You have some Warp Storm points in Undivided for. And what that is really good for is a unit like Demonettes, something that's fast, to basically be able to run up the table and increase its -1 leadership banner to a 12-inch bubble.
Let's talk about why that's important.
Sure.
Because let's go over the ways that demons deep strike. Sorry, what's the actual term?
Materialize. Yeah, that's not exactly what it's called, but they manifest.
Manifest.
Yep.
That's to say. So demons have 3 different ways that they come in from reserves, deep strike reserves. So if you come in on your opponent's deployment side, you're 9 inches away. If you come in on your deployment, you're 3 inches away. And if you come in the neutral zone, you're either 9 inches away or your opponent's leadership up to minimum of 3 inches away.
Or the
Or
locust.
the locust. But the thing is why that's a big deal of extending that demon with usually within 6 inches. It's just -1 to your leadership because you can get shorter charges. Now, one of the bigger things when we talk about how demons come in is when you're talking about deep striking into the neutral zone could be 0.1 millimeter outside of your opponent's deployment zone.
Yep.
So you're still deep striking that shorter distance and then making those charges. Also, what I use quite a bit, and I was surprised how often it happens, is deep striking into your own deployment zone.
Yep.
Especially when you're playing missions like board quarters where you're at the 30-inch mark, which is your deployment zone. Then you can deploy at the edge of your deployment zone, and all of a sudden you're getting 3, 4, 5-inch
You're
charges.
playing data scry where you're cutting the map basically in a corner, and there is no man's land objectives across the entire middle of the table. Well, you
100%.
can literally be right there. So that's important. And then the other thing that you can do with that increasing the aura, if you roll well enough, is you can also add an additional -1 to the leadership on top of that. So basically, a Demonette unit moves 10 inches plus a D6. So
And it's important to be aware of your opponent's leaderships when playing demons,
Yeah.
because a lot of things that you would think would have high leaderships
don't.
don't.
Just don't.
Tyranids, anything that's not Synapse has
Like a 5 or a 6.
things like Chaos Knights, but just don't have great
Yeah,
leaderships.
no. And then when you start minusing that leadership, it's very important. So we'll talk about that. So basically, all demons, if you are within 6 inches of them, they -1 to your leadership, and they -1 to your combat attrition test. So that's another thing that a lot of people don't realize is important. It's a big deal, especially in certain matchups where they have a unit of 10 models and you only kill 4 or 5. They're like, oh, I'll be fine because I'm morale 8, and you're like, actually, you're morale 7, and you're lost 4
failing on
models,
ones and twos.
and you're failing on 1s and 2s. Or when you make them go to the halfway mark, I have 4 guys left, I should be fine.
Yeah, fail half of the time.
Yeah, now you're 1s, 2s, and 3s.
Huge amount of wounds, especially when you're talking about bigger units and stuff like that too.
So that's very powerful. Those are some undivided stuff. That's some little tech that a lot of people don't know. But yeah, running a squad of Demonettes because they're fast. And I say Demonettes because they are the fastest unit. You have to have a banner. They are the fastest units that have a banner in the army. They are a 10-inch move, plus your advance. You can get up to 6 inches. You can basically move 16 inches on that turn. Then you're increasing that range to a 12-inch bubble. And a 12-inch aura on top of their footprint is quite large.
Especially when it's a 10-man. Let's actually pull it out. Just the 10.
This is a
The
10.
only unpainted thing we have on the table.
Yeah,
I love
I
it.
apologize, guys.
No, but that's a big deal, though, because the 10 models can take up some serious space and touch a lot of things, especially when you're talking about moving up to 16 inches. So, plus they bang.
Yeah, they have a ton of attacks. They're very good for counterpunch units. They have some very good spells that can go on them. They are core, obviously, so they get all the nice core rules as well. So they're just a really great unit for holding your backfield objectives. They're not super expensive either, but that, if you take the 12-inch bubble from where this is at, I mean, it's very, this is how far out you are. You're very, this is a circle around this area. I mean, that covers most of the board right there. You're in a huge
Walking
spot.
Directly. Oh. Good shot.
So, yeah, so very important. So, you know, like that's just some stuff that you can do that's different that, you know, people don't know. So, yeah, so that is list construction, warp storm, all that good stuff. So it's important to really know what you're going to spend your warp storm points every turn. Even if you roll a low number, you got to kind of understand, like, oh,
What can I do?
right, what can I do? What's available? So I think that Khorne is definitely the best for warp storm. I was going to talk about the only other one that I think that is very strong that is not in Khorne or Undivided, which is, of course, Slaanesh. Now, Slaanesh is a really great ability. Unfortunately, it really only works for, in most of the lists that I've seen, those Demonettes and Be'lakor, which is +1 to advance and charge. I mean, that is, when you come out of reserve and you are 7 or 8 inches away, +1 to advance and charge means you need a 7-inch charge. That's pretty good. I like that a lot, especially someone like Be'lakor who has that warp locus, which we will talk about now, I guess, which is some of these big characters.
Well, let's put him in the middle real quick on that because
Sure.
it is a big deal because now with a warp locus, which Be'lakor has, and you can get on a couple others, you can
All the name characters have
Right.
warp locus, and then
put
you
them, a
can
unit
give it to.
within 6 inches of him, wholly within, of 6 inches of him, and then you can also just be 6 inches away from any other unit.
Yeah, so it's very, very powerful, very important. It really helps out for a lot of your abilities that you're going to do. Now, the strong part, the reason why Be'lakor is taken in a lot of lists, not only because he is a strong model and has a whole bunch of abilities, he's kind of like the gatekeeper part of your army. Some people can handle him, some people can't handle him. If you don't have a way to handle him, he's very difficult, and he does a whole bunch of damage. So that's the first thing. The second thing is there is a Tzeentch stratagem, which he has all the marks, which allows him to basically teleport anywhere on the table for 2 CP, more than 9 inches away from my opponent. Then that happens instead of him moving. So that happens during the movement phase.
So at the end of the movement phase, when you bring in your reserves, you're bringing units within 6 inches of him now,
Right.
and then the unit that you brought in has to be 6 inches away from the unit that you're charging.
So that's really powerful. Just some of the stuff that you can do with some of these characters. So that is when you're constructing your list, what you want to look at. Now we're going to talk about the second thing, which is secondaries, which is extremely important when you're list building, and then we want to talk about your scoring. How does your list function? Because me and Brad have seen a lot of people who play demons. They are a very popular army right now, and I'm not going to lie to you, I've seen a lot of mistakes. I see a lot of people play the army incorrectly because of what they think.
The thing is that you can make a scary army that can't score. It kills,
Yeah.
but you're not just going to table every single person you play. And even if you do table them, a lot of times you're not going to put up enough points.
Yeah, I mean, how many times you've gotten to the table and you've talked to your opponent and they go, all right, I give up a 7 or 8 for no prisoners. I give up a 10 for, assassinate. And you're like, I need to kill everything, so I'm going to take that stuff. And then you get to the end of the game, you're like, I missed 5 points on the bottom there because I took assassinate. I missed 7 points on the bottom for the other one because I took this. And then maybe I took banners. Well, I only scored 10 points on banners. I lost 5 points there. So on the bottom, I've already lost, 17 points on the bottom. My top game better be a 45 because if not, then I probably lost that game.
And that's such a big deal is you have to know when you're building a list with your demons, you have to ask yourself, what's my play style? One, of course, my game plan. But then how am I scoring points? What is my game plan to win this game? And that includes my secondaries. Now, we have to choose secondaries. Some secondaries are auto takes.
Yeah, definitely, especially with demons.
Let's just talk about reality. Let's start with that.
So Reality Rebels is a fantastic secondary. I'm very glad that they reworded how it works. So basically how it works now is it is table quarters, and you score
And
a
the
point.
middle.
What?
In the middle.
And the middle. I was going to say that. You score 1 point for each table quarter that you have more units than your opponent.
Not models, units.
Units, not models.
Which is
units.
significantly different than a lot of the other codexes.
Yeah, so this is unit based, firstly. Secondly, you score an additional point if you're just wholly within 6 inches of the middle of the table, which is another very powerful one. The reason why it is such a great secondary is one, your opponents don't really want to get close to 2 of the quarters of the map anyway, just to start. So if you score 2 points a turn on the first 3 turns, well, that's 6 just for these 2 quarters. And then later in the game, if you're doing well, now you might be in 3 or 4 quarters of the map, plus 3 quarters plus the middle.
I've gotten 4s so
Oh
often.
yeah, end game when everybody's dead, nobody has any models left.
Even if you're trading pieces back and forth, you hold the back and he kills you at the end, but you got into 4.
Yep.
Several times.
The important part to note here is that you score these at the end of your turn. So it's very powerful because even if, like you said, I get tabled at the end of 5 or 4, I lose a quarter because I sent a model over there just to get killed by you in the shooting phase, no matter to me, I score a point.
Yeah.
So it's fine. So it really helps with the plays that you're trying. It really plays well with the play style of your army, which is lots of mobility, lots of pressure, lots of basically blocking out portions of the map from your opponent playing. So,
and the thing is that we'll talk a little bit about gameplay after this, because sometimes keeping your opponent in the corner for 3 turns while sacrificing a lot of units is still the right play.
yeah,
If you're taking the board, because if you score 2 or 3 12s and your opponent is on 4s, they just can't mathematically come back in a turn or 2.
I mean, if you're on 2 quarters of the map, you get that 3rd quarter of the map on turn 2 and turn 3, and let's say you lose more than half your army in turn 3. Well, turn 1 and 2, you scored 3 points, so that's 6 points already. Then turn 3, you're on 4. Now you score a 4. For that, you're already on a 10. So even if your opponent stays here on their turn 3, kills everything on turn 3, you send a unit out to die in the middle of the table, you still score another 3. You're up to 13 already.
Yeah.
Means on the last turn, last 2 turns, 4 and 5, you only have to basically pull there.
Yeah,
so it is very powerful
Reality's just
secondary.
crazy on that.
It's probably the best secondary that we have access to, even with the normal book secondary. So that one's really strong. And we'll just talk about some of the other ones that are not so strong. So, of course, we have, the leadership one. So
Leadership one's very hit and miss, because every time you kill something, you roll, and if you beat their leadership, you get points.
correct. And models that flee off the table, you also get points for. So the important part to note with that one is these are bad but situationally good. If you play an army that has just a ton of MSU, Yanari, where you're taking 15, 20 units, that's great. These things do not have good morale. You're going to kill a lot of these models. You're going to be nearby when you do them. Very powerful. You're going to score a lot of points on that one. What it's not good against is something like Thousand Suns or Chaos Space Marines, where they're just like, yeah, I only have 5 units coming after you. Yeah, there are units in the back, but you're not going to see them. They're not going to do anything. So Chaos Knights are another one. You're not going to take it against Chaos Knights. It's just not a thing. So it's important to note that these are available, but they're situationally good.
Yeah.
So understanding how they work is very powerful. Then the other one, which is really good, is Spoilers of Reality, which is the action-based one. Now, this one is difficult to do. Again, situationally good. The important part to note here, we just had a master class where we talked about terrain and things like that. So it's important to note for this secondary in particular, terrain is very important because you have to sit on that objective for your entire turn and your opponent's turn. You do not score until next turn.
The next command phase.
Yeah. So How this one works is you can only do it on objectives outside of your deployment zone. So again, situationally good. On certain missions, like the Scouring, both those objectives are not in your deployment zone. There are no objectives in your deployment zone. And then you stand on it, you start the action, you complete it at the beginning of your next turn, and it scores you 4 points per. And that's great. But
it is bad sacred grounds.
yeah, it is. It's rough to do. But again, on a mission that is, like data scry or the Scouring, there's a potential for you to go, all right, I can easily score 8 points on a game maybe that I have bad objectives, bad secondaries.
Yeah, especially because this is an army that revolves around that third secondary being
questionable.
Questionable, yeah.
Questionable.
I mean, a lot of times you're going to take a psyche secondary, but against, well, like we talked earlier, there's armies that you're just not going to take that chance.
Yeah.
The sisters might deny me on a 6 and then use the strat on a 4. Thousand Sons might just keep using the strat, the 3d6.
Yep. You might be playing Chaos Knights. They might push all the knights to the middle of the table. Well, taking Ritual is going to be really rough for you because not only can you not use your psychic powers, but it might be difficult for you to get in the middle of the table.
Just to exist.
Yeah,
You die.
so it's not a terrible secondary. It's situationally good, but it is important to talk about these ones because you have to understand where you stand at all times when you get to a table and you know what you're fighting against. So those are the book secondaries. Let's talk about the secondaries that you're just going to take because they're the better options for most of your games.
I banner a lot.
Yeah, Banner is fantastic. Now, Brad and myself, we take a lot of MSU units in Demons. They are the bread and butter of how this army operates. But one of the most important things with Banners and why it is such a great secondary for us is Flamers.
Flamers exist. Flamers are infantry. They are jump infantry, which means that they can do actions. They can drop a band. They can drop bombs if they want to.
They can drop bombs. They can drop banners. They can data scry for you.
And you're not, most of the time, your Flamers, especially if you go first, against most armies, your Flamers are just setting up for the next turn. You're not getting anything. Your opponent's probably not.
Yeah, you're
giving
not going to go on turn 1. You're not.
Yeah.
Your opponent's not giving you a target that you're just going to be able to fly Flamers out and kill something on turn 1. Not to mention, they move 12 inches, and I hear that moving 12 inches and still being able to do actions,
It's pretty good.
real spicy.
So you can get that neutral zone objective each time. So
Every time.
Banners just feels like a very safe secondary.
Yep.
You're almost always putting up a 10 plus.
Yep.
So
They're unaffected by terrain, so you can stick them in that, when you're playing Games Workshop, they can sit in that dense. They can sit in that dense, no problem. There's nothing's going to happen to them. They're -1 to hit with a 3-up save all the time. Unmodifiable 3+ for shooting. No one's going to shoot at them on turn 1, and if they do, nothing happens to them. So they can easily go and get that banner. Player-based terrain, it's even easier for them to do. Demonettes is another great target for banners as well. Again, 10-inch movement, but a very good counterpunch unit. So
especially on the diagonal.
Yeah.
Because they can set up right behind the terrain, walk right in.
And, a lot of the time, a lot of the units that you're going to send to do these actions are not good. We've got Legionnaires are not particularly good and doing actions. Crute are not particularly good once they finish with their action. These girls,
Bang.
they hit hard. You can give them 50 attacks with a spell.
51, thank you very much.
51 with exploding 6s.
Exploding 6s and more 1 CP full rerolls.
Yeah, I mean...
And AP 3 if you buff them with the Trance Weaver.
Yeah, it's quite fantastic how much they can do for the damage for just like 130-point units. So Banners is second. And then third, we talked about this a little bit, but Psychic secondaries. 100%. So we want to be in the middle of the board. I want to put pressure on my opponent as much as possible. 1, because it makes my deep strikes easier. And 2, it makes my primary scoring easier as well. And the third secondary is difficult to get. So I'm going to need something that kind of plays on both those things.
And that's the thing is when you're looking at your list should be scoring your secondaries by playing the game that you want to play already.
Yep.
If you find when you take a secondary that it feels like it's the opposite of where you want to be, you have to start changing those because what you want to do is have your game plan. You should be almost accidentally scoring your secondaries because they should just be how you're playing.
Yeah, it should work in concert with your list.
100%.
You should not be going like, all right, I'm taking Chaos Knight. And I've seen people take this all the time. They're like, all right, I'm taking Chaos Knights. I want to kill everything on the board and do everything on the board. But I took one knight who's a psyker, and he's going to be doing psychic interrogation. Like, no, take ritual, go to the middle, because you want to be in the middle anyway. Try to do things that are going to reward the
Synergize
way
with
you're
it.
playing the game.
100%.
Yeah.
You don't want to be having to do your game plan and this other thing.
Yeah.
You only have so many units for one. So pulling stuff aside in an army like Demons, you just don't have anything that's super cheap. I
Yep.
don't want to just throw things away for no reason.
Yeah, so rituals, very good for us. Interrogate is good situationally on top, like as well. I think
it's
ritual's just better because you're just going to want to go to the middle of
It's
the
just
table.
the time you're going to take it is when you're in a game where you think that your secondaries need to be 15.
Yeah, you need to score those extra 3 points. Also, your opponent has a lot of characters. I would do it if I was taking, Chaos Space Marines. They have a ton of psychers.
Might do it.
They have a ton of characters.
Yeah, might
There's
do
like
it
5,
against
6.
Necrons, for instance.
Yeah, they have a lot of characters. One of them gets to teleport. At some point, he's going to teleport a unit across the table or somewhere on the table, so you will be able to get to that guy. But primarily, ritual. You're going to want to go to the middle of the table. You're going to want a ritual. Bellicor is great for doing ritual. His other powers, meh. Really just wants the ritual. He's a ritual kind of guy.
Kill secondaries, I take if my opponent has something.
Abundance.
Yeah, it has to be easy and part of the. I'm going to bring it down if I'm playing
Right.
knights because
Yep.
that's just happening.
And then,
Necrons, Tyranids, I'm probably going to, depending on the builds, obviously.
Yep.
No prisoners is an option because they give up 15.
those are
plus.
usually the only two that I take, and that's literally like you said. We have to get to the table, and you say to me, "Hey, I give up like 15 plus," and I'm like, "Okay, cool, no worries." If you say something to me like, "I give up 9," if you table me, I'm like, nope.
As a rule of thumb for any army, but
Especially these guys, and we're going to talk a little bit about why you have to be very careful with this.
I'm
but-
really big on making sure that my secondaries are 10 pluses all the time.
Yep. And the reason why I was going to say you're going to talk about this is that some of these other armies you will play well and you might be able to table them. Demons is an army that is a glass cannon. They hit very, very hard, but their durability just not there.
No.
You will eventually run out of units. So trying to say to your opponent that I'm going to play 5 turns with you. We're going to get to the end. I'm going to score because I'm going to kill all your models. That's just not going to happen in every game.
You might just not have anything in your left. I mean, even things that your bread and butter here, your Daemonettes, your Bloodletters, all of those have a 4-up versus shooting, but a 5-up in hand-to-hand, which means that pretty much anybody with a decent volume of attacks, these are 1-wound models also.
Yep. They don't have great morale.
Yep.
They're going to fail morale. And yeah, they're -1 of their combat attrition tests. That's great, but they're going to lose models.
Yeah.
You are going to take, and the only -1 of the combat attrition tests if you take the instrument and the banner. So like you need to do things, and even then they're still going to fail morale. They're only morale 8 with the banner and the instrument. So morale 8.
And again,
1-wound
5-up
models.
save, 1-wound models, dudes are
not
dying.
going to work. They're
Yeah.
unmodifiable too. So
You're
like you
failing
can't
66% of your
Yeah, you're
saves.
not adding to the durability by putting them in cover. You're not adding to the durability by activating a spell on them. There's no way to modify these at all. So it's just straight dice.
Let's talk about when we're building our list, what we're looking at.
Sure.
Because
Yeah.
besides my 3 units of flamers,
Those aren't. What are flamers?
yeah, I was like, what?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll talk about flamers later on, but I mean, they're not like,
Every list in
yeah,
the universe.
just 15
if it
of
says
those.
chaos, you have it. The thing is that we're looking for maximum utility, maximum ability to play the game, and preferably maximum ability to kill plus score.
Yeah. So
Hu-
I need to be able to it needs to fill into one of these slots and preferably fill into both these slots.
Yeah.
Like I want to, when I look at a unit like, I mean, we keep using Demonettes, but they're just such a great unit. When I look at a unit like Demonettes, not only are they very good at just standing there and holding objectives, but they also have the ability to make my opponents, subtract their morale, which makes my deep strikes better. They have the ability to attack back. They're a good counterpunch unit.
They're fast too. I mean, they can get places.
Yep.
They have
So they're also OBSEC. They're also core. Like, these are good things. Great unit to look at.
I think that you have to bring a decent amount of. We'll look at some of the sample lists at the end, but it's important that you have enough units to play the game. You can be the biggest, scariest big guy army in the world, but there's times where your opponent just flies 2 Tau bombers over your backfield and kills your only 2 units that can hold the backfield, and
Yeah.
you might kill everything, but
Which is why I think you're seeing a lot of these lists as we go further down into the season. We started with,
4 big guys.
4 big guys, then we went down to 3 big guys. Now most people just take 2 or 1 big guy.
Yeah.
So it is definitely like you said, Brad. It's definitely, we get to a point where you're like, that's 300 points. That could be 2 squads and some more flamers, or 2 squads and maybe a Beast of Nurgle or another character, which is more utility for me. Yeah, or some flesh hounds, something like, just more units utilizing. So I think that's very important when you want to look at your army. So let's
It's
get
just really, how am I scoring? But we need to talk about him.
we're going to talk about him.
I need to talk about him.
We're going to talk about him, but I think next we need to talk about general gameplay.
Fine.
How demons function, what you're trying to do, the most important key takeaways, because I think a lot of people really don't understand how they play, other than like big unit, smash, middle table,
Yes,
flamers, good.
Here's one of the biggest things, and this goes for every army. There's 2 things that I'm going to say on this. 1, every single time I move anything on the board, every single time, I ask myself 3 questions. How am I scoring? How am I denying score? And how am I setting up for the next turn? The second thing that goes with that is you're playing a mainly hand-to-hand besides the flamers and a little bit of psychics. When you're fighting and you find yourself fighting in the middle of nowhere, you have to ask, why am I in the middle of nowhere? Because if you're not fighting on an objective, there better be a real good reason why you're not fighting on an objective, because not fighting on an objective doesn't score you any points. It doesn't take away any points. So unless your opponent just left a
Key unit,
a
they failed to
key-
charge,
failed to charge, and you're looking. But besides that, don't fall for the trap of punching something that you didn't need to punch in the middle of nowhere, because then again, you're not scoring any points. You're not taking away any points. I want to be punching people on objectives most of the time.
Yeah, I want to be forcing my opponents to come and kill units.
Especially with the fact that you're dropping down OBSEC units. So
Yep.
even if you're not clearing the entire thing off, a lot of times you're just taking the objective from them.
Yeah. So, I mean, some other stuff with demons is very important. So the stuff I'll talk about with demons is very, the army is a army that is supposed to put pressure on different points of your opponent's army. The goal of the army is to split your opponent's resources. Basically, your opponent is going to try to take a no man's land objective so they can hold a second objective. That's just how everyone plays 40K,
In the
right?
universe,
Like,
yes.
no one's going to go, I'm cool with just 4 points a turn. I think I can win. So they're going to go over there and take a unit. So your job is to then disrupt them over here. If they try to come to take your no man's land's objective, you're also there to disrupt them. You're trying to pull them as tight as possible and then use your deep strikes to not only hit those gaps, kill those units, but really, which is a lot of the time that I see people, they go, hey man, what are bloodletters for? They don't really punch hard. What's the deal? Bloodletters are designed to basically steal your opponent's objectives. They're to kill a very, they're to kill a unit and they're to do stuff. So, they're mostly there just to consolidate and get on to objectives. And I think that's how demons play for me.
What's a big deal on that is one of the things that the don'ts. How about just go to a couple don'ts? Stop charging into people's home field objective that has 1 million units on it.
Right.
When best case scenario, you kill some units. You don't take any points away from them. I like to charge anywhere that I can go that's either going to score me more points or deny points.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. That's the most important thing with demons.
It's 100% with that. But I see people just constantly doing that.
Yeah.
They send 2 or 3 units of Bloodletters and Scarbrand.
They're like, what happened? I went to my home opponent's objective, and,
and
they killed everything. I
yeah,
don't
they
know.
killed
These units
everything.
are terrible. And,
And
you're
I,
like,
I,
well,
and I never took the objective from them because they still had a couple OBSEC guys. You're like, well, what's on the 2 neutral objectives?
yeah.
Take those. It also makes them extend off that home base. they're not getting the benefits of auras and everything else that made that unit so much tougher. Make them make decisions. That's the thing is if you only ask a couple questions, your opponent's going to get all of them right. You have to ask lots of questions. What are they going to do to take your objective away after you've taken theirs away? You just gave them.
Then
a
how are
forward.
they pressuring the middle,
Right.
right? You're going here, you're going there. Your opponent's stuck in his home base.
He's also
How's he
sitting
going
with
there? How's he going
Bellicor
there?
doing
How's he going
ritual,
there?
you know.
You
You keep scoring points, taking that away. Over the course of the game, you have to start making more and more decisions about what you're killing based on points. Is that scoring me points? Is that denying points? And that's what I'm saying. Don't do moves that just you feel like I'm going to kill a whole bunch of models, but in the end you don't change the game state at all.
yeah.
Even if you kill a ton of stuff in the home field,
Might not affect the game. So it's very
Right.
important that general gameplay with these guys is you want to be scoring points. So when anything you do at all has to score a point. You cannot just send a bloodthirster to go there, then go here and go deal with this man right now. No, that guy needs to go and mess up that objective. Now all of a sudden my opponent has to send something of actual value over
and
there,
in multiple phases. now.
which is pulling stuff from there. Maybe he fails a charge. Now I got a unit that comes in, hits them from the side. The thirster pings up that unit. Like he's just,
you
doing
can
that.
really steamroll with this
Yeah.
arm if played right. You
Yeah.
have to choose where you're going because again, one wound models you can't just take damage for no reason.
Yep.
Even the best, even in shooting, you're still failing half of your saves
Yep.
because
So
the demon save is unmodifiable. It doesn't matter if you're sitting in epic cover or anything else. It's
Yep.
just that's it.
So the other last thing I'll say about general gameplay is it's so important. You need to master the charge phase. Consolidates, piles in. You need to make sure
you need to master the extra movement
yes,
phase.
the extra movement phase. So it's very important that you understand the mechanics of how this works.
Start charging past people onto the other sides so you can consolidate to where you want to go.
Consolidate on an objective.
Consolidate-
Consolidate on a unit that's not supposed to be in combat. Now you're
Consolidate
forcing
behind a wall.
Yeah,
It's
now
just-
they're not going to be able to shoot you, or now they have to send a melee unit
I
into you.
consistently watch people just charge up
Straight
to-
ahead. They
right,
straight, straight ahead.
and then just kind of make a 3-inch at the end.
Yep.
You need to be, especially not basing unless there's a reason you need to base.
Yeah.
You want to stop somebody from going somewhere. But like most of the time, you're going to be walking around to where you actually want to be, especially after you want to be after you win that combat.
Yep.
Being somewhere.
So that is general gameplay. Let us talk about some key units. Brad wants to talk about somebody. So
Oh, it's like with the bloodthirster.
all right. So this is the main man. Honestly, if you want my opinion, this is literally the reason this codex was made. I think someone sat at home and they were like, "How badass can I make this guy?" And then the rest of the shit, they were like, "Whatever." It's
They're like,
fine.
you need to put some other stuff in. No,
Nah,
I don't.
nah, that's
It just
fine.
left.
So Brad, talk to me about this man. What does he do for you? Other
He
than
made
get
me
you,
play demons.
other than get you very excited.
So, this guy is a boss. He's 8. Well, you're going to take. There's some other options you can take. All of them are dumb, and they don't like puppies or sunshine. What you're taking is making this guy be 8 wounds per phase capped.
Yeah, that is your exalted trait. So you get 3
22
access.
wound model.
21.
21.
Scarbrand's 22.
Sorry.
Okay, so he's 20, but there are 3 exalted traits. That is, of course, the best one. The other ones literally aren't even worth talking about. Wound capping is just a fantastic defense mechanism for a unit that just
This
has
guy
a 4-up.
8 base attacks at strength 16, doing 3 plus D3 damage, or double that with sweeps. And you can take, I don't know, I'm probably going to take this artifact. It's pretty good,
I hear it's good.
which ignores all modifiers to hit and to wound and gives you +1 damage. So you now have 3 damage sweep attacks. So he's got 16 attacks, or as we talked about in the Warp Storm, you can give him a +1. So he's now got 9 base with that. So he's now taking 18 sweep attacks, hitting and wounding on 2s.
Yeah, so fantastic. And then on top of that, let's just add some extra durability to him. And he loves to take the Warlord trait, which is, of course,
5 with no pain.
yeah, 5 Feel No Pain is just fantastic on him. So
He's such a boss.
he is probably the best. If you are running demons, there is literally, even if you're like, I hate big models, you're still going to take
I was
him.
to say, my list, I'm allergic to things that cost over 150 points.
You're still going
And
to
I
take
still
him.
take him.
He can go into deep strike. That's fantastic. And he just creates a problem for a lot of armies. He's a gatekeep unit.
Huge. The people that can't operate in a lot of phases have a huge problem
Yeah.
with him.
Plus, you have that ability where he can heal. So you Warp Storm heal him. Sometimes that puts you above that wound cap again, and your opponent's like, God damn it. So 4 up is all the big guys. So this man is toughness 8 as well, which is great, and he flies.
Yeah, he's been working out.
Yeah, he's been hitting the gym. So that's that guy. Let's talk about some of these other characters. Be'lakor, I don't really need to talk about. Everybody knows about Be'lakor. So we're going to talk about this boy next, which is Mr. Skulltaker.
I think he's the most underrated character
Underrated
in the Codex.
Not taken off. And
I took him after I started with 2 big guys, and then I went down to 1, and I replaced one of them with Skulltaker. And then during the game, I had to look at the Codex multiple times because I'm like, there's no way that's what he does.
So the important part to note about this guy is full rerolls to hit against characters. That's his first thing.
Murder faces characters.
He's got 3 damage attacks that are -3. He also gets to do some other little thing called I don't know, no invols.
Yeah.
Just no invols on a 3 damage sword. I hear is pretty good.
Yeah, it's legit.
So, not to mention there is a secondary ability with him, which is if you kill a unit with this guy or that guy, it is a corn strat where you just give exploding dice to all of your corn units. So really, really good. He's fantastic. If you haven't seen this guy, he's like 110 points for him. He's
so cheap too.
great. So now we'll talk about this man
The Flux.
and this man.
Uh-oh. Flux in Pimp My Ride. Exhibit got a hold of him.
So this is
Is that too old for everybody? I mean, that's
I
what,
definitely
10
know Pimp My Ride. So this is the Fate Skimmer and the Flux Master. So basically, these are your Tzeentch characters.
Well,
and
put the Flamers next to him because he kind of is good for them, I heard.
all right, thought Flamers aren't good.
Yeah, well, they do all right if you make them +1 to wound.
So these guys are fantastic. They got great movement. The Chariot's great. I like the Chariot a lot. I just think it's a little too expensive. I think it's like 145 points. It is +1 to cast, which is great. For 30 points less, you can just take the guy on the disc.
It's easier to hide.
Yes.
That's the thing is that if you're bringing a decent amount of models, you're running out of room a lot of times.
It is a Chariot too, which is annoying. Now it flies, which is great, but it still has that Chariot profile,
It
which
doesn't
sometimes
YOLO
gets a
through
little
walls.
annoying.
It's kind of annoying.
Yes, I was going to say, it's kind of a little annoying for moving purposes.
I kind of go down things, and unless you're a monster, if you don't have breachable, nah.
So both of these guys, they give reroll 1s. They give the lieutenant rerolls for the flamers, for the core units, which is, of course, your blues, your pinks, and these flamer units. And here, the flamers are real good. They also have a spell, which makes these flamers +1 to wound, which is quite, I don't know, busted, I would say.
mean, they're only strength 5,
They
AP 2,
Yeah.
3 plus D6 shots.
So they have a
per
lot of
guy.
great spells. They're really, really strong. If you haven't seen these in your army, then you're probably not taking flamers, which
you
means
haven't probably taken demons. So.
yeah. So these are those guys.
These are probably must-sees. This is something that you need to use.
Yeah, these are must-have units, I think, for any demon book. Maybe not the Skulltaker, but you should definitely consider it.
I think she's super underrated.
So this is the Transweaver, and
super cheap.
Transweaver is great because sometimes you just need a character that's going to run into the middle of the table behind all the big boys and go humana, 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 and just cast a ritual. So sometimes you just need somebody who you don't care if they die. You're like, whatever. She also gives the Demonettes Hysterical Frenzy, which is +1 attack, exploding sixes,
and she just auto gives them
+1 AP, which is fantastic. She's very cheap. She's
70 points, right?
Yep,
Yeah.
70 points. I mean, so that's her. So those are all the HQs that I think you need to have. Now we'll go, obviously, for the troop choices. So we've got some blues here. So the things to note with the blue horrors here is you've got blues and you've got pinks. So my personal opinion is that they went a little too hard with pink horrors. 150 points is, I think, a little too much for them.
They're very nice. I mean, The problem is that you're not auto splitting. You're splitting on 4-ups.
The unit has to live through the shooting phase. It's
Yep.
very important.
100%.
It's a big thing that a lot of people kind of overlook. They're like, oh, but these units are unkillable. You're like, well, no, because they just sometimes die.
Yeah.
Now, the Blue Horrors are the cheaper option of the two. They're only 70 points, and they have a 4-up save instead of a 3-up, but they also do the splitting. So it's important to note that these guys are there.
They aren't doing actions, though.
They are not doing actions. They are not OPSEC. That is the unfortunate downfall of Blue Horrors. But
Which is why I tend to have a bunch of bloodletters and
yes.
units.
No, they split after.
They split after.
Yeah,
They changed it completely
Yeah.
because it's almost like Necrons now, where if you just peel the unit, it doesn't make any
Yep.
difference.
So that's important to note that you can't just do that. So now, I think
Nurglings are still amazing.
so. Nurglings, they went down in points, which is great because they used to be 66. They used to be more expensive. They used to
Yeah,
be
but they
22 points a model.
Yeah,
now they went
used
down to
be
20.
54. Way,
Sure.
Yeah.
Back when I used to run them in 8th edition, where I had 40 on the table.
Yeah.
So these guys are great for a lot of missions. For certain missions, you actually don't get to start on to the
I think
objective.
they're actually a semi after playing without them on missions where you need somebody forward deployed
Yeah.
to get a CP.
Reality Rebels, they're great for. They can literally start in the middle of the table on turn 1. They just score you a point.
Yeah, especially if you haven't watched the video about terrain placement, your opponent puts down or you get to put down a piece of terrain in the middle.
Yep.
Utilize your opponent's terrain and just deploy right behind
Yeah,
it.
they're great for move blocking. They're just a really nice unit. They can start anywhere on the board more than 9 inches away from your opponent, so that's really powerful. So those are those guys. And now we're going to come to the very, very powerful units, which is the last unit other than Flamers, which we pretty much talked about already, so I'm not going to go over those again.
This is just the bread and butter of your army, though.
I will tell you, though, how many times someone has come to me and said, I don't think bloodletters are good. What am I doing wrong? And Brad, tell me what we're doing wrong with these bloodletters. What are we doing wrong?
You're not playing them correctly
Okay.
by the things that we were talking about. You need to be hitting your opponent's objectives, the neutral zone objectives. You need to be taking objectives from people. You need to be hitting combats that you're winning. Stop hitting the beef of your opponent's army.
Yeah, they are designed for two things. I talk about this all the time when I do a lot of my chats and stuff like that, but the top of the scale, this is what we do. Big boys, they are to kill elite units. That's what they're there for. Disrupt your opponent's primary
Trash. Those are
elite
killing
units.
trash.
Then we go to the second tier, which is your flamers and some of your psychic powers and things like that. Those guys are designed to kill their OBSEC and their troops. Then when you get to the last step, which is the letters, the demonettes, they are there to kill objective holding units and steal your opponent's primary.
Be killing chaos cultists.
Yeah, they should be
Kroot.
killing legionnaires,
yes.
things that have 2 wounds that are not good in
Yeah,
combat.
I want to punch a guy that's limping on his one.
Yeah, I want to
good
punch
leg
like a
in the
one-legged
alley.
hobo. That's what they want to do. Is that some random guy that you put over there just to hold an objective? I want to kill that
Exactly.
unit.
And
What I don't want to do is what I see a lot of people doing, which is send them into Terminators. They send them into...
They have again 1 wound, 5-up save.
No,
Even if you don't.
They're only strength 5. I mean, they're not crazy.
What I'm saying is just the thing is that even if you do great, they're not going to wipe that whole tough unit.
Correct.
Terminators,
That's what I'm
whatever.
saying. Yeah.
And what happens is if they have even half the unit, your whole unit's gone.
Yeah.
Every time.
You're going to lose 5 or 6 models. You're going to fail morale. You're going to lose 1 or 2 more. You'll have 2 or 3 left, and they just
And then
get
you're
cleaned up.
Yeah, then you're just pointless.
You give extra movement to your opponent because now they get to move twice, and they're going to move again because, well, they're going to stay in combat with you because it's free, and you're not going to do any damage to them with 2 or 3 models. So it's very important that you understand how bloodletters work. I cannot tell you how many times I've seen people play them incorrectly. We're going to be doing some games later on today. One of them might have demons on there, and we'll show you what's up. We'll show you how to play these guys. But they are designed to seal objectives. They are designed to basically pressure your
they're just
opponent's
doing their
primary.
job when they're hitting trash.
Yep.
You should just be picking up trash and making your opponent come over
Yep.
with a real unit.
Yep.
To
So
do something about it.
these are all the units, guys. We're briefly going to talk about some sample lists. So the first one, we kind of talked about this architect earlier, but 2 big boys. That Bloodthirster and Be'lakor are the 2 big boys. You're going to run your token, 3 units of Flamers, 3 units of bloodletters is very important. You're going to run those as well, so that's very powerful. Then you're going to have, demonettes. Demonettes are great. You'll have 1 unit of demonettes, and then you've got your characters to buff your flamers, which is very important as well. And then I've got a transweaver to also buff the demonettes.
Love him.
And to him.
Sorry.
God damn it, man. What the hell? And then I've got mostly I have 1 unit of Nurglings, and that's most of the list, unfortunately.
Bellicor wasn't fantasy Bellicor, so he let me down.
Yeah, I get that part. So
he didn't have my 7th edition of fantasy. I wasn't allowed to cast a spell that affected the entire table, so I was like, I don't want Bellicor anymore.
So the second list that we put we're going to put in the comment section is no big boys except for the Thirster.
Thirster auto goes in, but it gives you more ability.
It's 420 points worth of extra stuff.
I effectively got 3.5 units.
Yeah, it's 2 additional squads of demonettes. You got 30 demonettes in that list. You've got 30 bloodletters. Then you've got some backfield objective holders. You could have a squad of pinks. You could have hounds. Whatever you want to do that is going to
it just let you play the game, give you a couple of options. I actually like hounds quite a bit just because it gives you an option for
denies. Good denies. Yeah. Oh, one last unit before we let you guys go that we didn't talk about is this guy. So this is a Beast of Nurgle. I know they took a beating in this book from the last book, but they're actually pretty good. They're a slept-on unit, I think, just like the Skull Taker. These guys are great for just holding your backfield objective, and I think once Guard comes out, you're going to see a lot more of those guys.
Ooh, yeah.
Because that thing at high toughness with a good save, if you don't kill it, he regenerates all of his
I
wounds.
was just about to say, regens all his wounds, so they have to finish it off. And that's a big deal because you can kind of goad people into wasting shots.
Yeah.
Especially if they...
You have a pretty good save, too, for shooting. I mean, it's 4-up save.
Well, I'm just saying, a lot of times people will shoot, see that they didn't do enough, and then...
They put more into it. They're like, well, I've already in for a penny, in for a pound. I guess I just slam everything into them.
They either waste too many shots to finish it off, or go to something else, and then nothing happens.
Yeah,
to
it
them.
is it's a very great unit. Also, something a lot of people don't know, you have a no fallback strat with him. That a lot of people don't use, but that's a 4-up no fallback strat.
Nurgle wants to play, bro.
He's Nurgle. He just wants to play. He's a very friendly guy. So that's what we talk about here today, guys. Does anybody have any questions? Anybody have any things that they want us to talk about before we let you guys go today?
Can we talk about these dice not rolling well?
No, we can't talk about those again. So, ooh, that was no questions. Nice. Nice. So, guys, thanks everybody so much for joining us. There will be more masterclasses. You guys get to pick on a monthly basis what we're going to be doing for our masterclass. So we've done Tau already, and we've done Demons. So tell us what you guys want to see. We've got next month's coming up pretty soon. So
I'm also doing the part 2 of the tournament prep.
Yep, we're going to do that as well. So that's definitely something we got going on. And then later today, we have some games scheduled for you guys for your entertainment. And we'll show you guys what we're looking. Yeah, so we'll show you guys, how all this stuff comes together in an actual game situation. So, we really appreciate you guys hanging out with us. Like I said, this is a test run for us. So it will get better, I promise.
We wanted to come over. We appreciated Dom letting us jump over and do some stuff. Yeah. And we wanted to hang out, meet, talk to you guys, and do things.
Well, just want to know that we transitioned from going from a TTS class to more in person.
Yeah. Yeah, so we originally started with TTS, and I think that this in-person just works a lot better. You guys can see what we're talking about better. And I know myself, I don't know about you other two, but I am not a fan of TTS. So...
I love me some TTS.
Yeah, so I just like in-person stuff a little better. I feel like I feel more at home. Maybe because my models are painted so nicely. I really like to see my nicely painted models on the table. But thanks, everybody, for joining us. We have another game scheduled for this afternoon. So stay tuned, guys.
And we are...